Hi, this is my review of the Malefactor, an accursed character class. This is a revised and expanded version of the Malefactor base class brought out by Total Party Kill Games. This class is compatible with the Pathfinder role-playing game and the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition RPG. Now let's talk about the quality of the PDF. The quality is great. The document is fully bookmarked. You have hyperlinks taking you to the D20 system reference document. You have these appropriate looking illustrations. Some of them look creepy, some others look quite kinky, some others look a bit more macabre. So they fit the theme of the Malefactor. And everything is very well written and explained. It's quite easy to tell apart the information that you can use with the Pathfinder role-playing game and with Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Now, let's talk about the contents. First, you have a few words from Gary McBride and Brian Berg, and they give you some pretty good ideas on how to use this class as either a villain type of player character or maybe as a hero. But this class is also excellent to be used as a non-player character. Then you have a bit of fiction, showing you some of the encounters that you can have when playing as a Malefactor. So what is the Malefactor? This is a character class that specializes in using its bad luck and misfortune. Those that were born under a certain circumstance become attached to spirits of chaos known as the Ila. So Malefactor is cursed for life. You have all sorts of bad luck and misfortune that even affects you as well as your closest allies. However, there are ways to wield this bad luck, misfortune, and accursed fate so that your enemies become affected by it. The role of this class is complex but fun at the same time because you have to be aware of what's happening during each combat round so that you can get into fights and get out fast enough so that they don't end up killing you, because although this class is quite sturdy, that is, you have D8 when it comes to hit dice and you have a decent selection of armor and weapons, this is not a class that will replace the fighter or the barbarian. This feels more like a support type of skirmisher. So you have to know when to get into the thick of battle and to get out just in time, as well as positioning yourself so that your accursed aura and your maledictions affect your enemies but don't present too much of a hindrance when your allies are trying to carry out an attack or a maneuver or whatever. By the end of this review, I'm going to talk a bit more about the strategic and tactical implications of this. Another cool thing is that because the Malefactor is so tied to chaos and bad luck and misfortune, I think that following certain deities, perhaps a deity of good luck or goodness and protection, is going to present some interesting role-playing opportunities because it kind of like enters into conflict with the essence of the Malefactor. And as I was saying, the Malefactor doesn't necessarily need to be a villain. You can also play as a hero. You have a good selection of class skills. Some of them feel a bit more on the intellectual, magical and knowledge side of things because you have a knowledge arcana, magical device use, sense motive, but you also have some more physically inclined skills such as climb, acrobatics, etc. One of the main features of the class, if not the most important one, is the aura of misfortune. All creatures, including the Malefactor himself or herself, within 10 feet are subject to a profane penalty to saving throws. Now, this aura of misfortune becomes more accursed as you level up, as you grow in power. So you have to become a bit of a pariah, staying away from the party, from your comrades, so that they do not become affected by your aura of misfortune, and trying to get as many of enemies as possible within that aura. So this is somewhat of a wild card type of character class, quite risky to play as. But then you have the strife pool, and as long as you have a single point of strife, you can evade those negative modifiers to your saving throw and other things. As a malefactor, that is, you won't be affected by your own aura, so that's a good thing. But still, your the other party members will be affected by that aura, so you still have to keep in mind when to get in and get out of different situations of combat. This strife pool also serves as a sort of fuel or resource to empower your other powers and abilities, specifically maledictions. Maledictions are effectively curses that present all sorts of obstacles and challenges, so that your enemies have a very difficult time in attacking you or your comrades. The interesting thing about the maledictions is that you can customize your malefactor. You can choose different maledictions or tweak them in different ways depending on the feats that you choose. So you could have two malefactors in the same party. That would certainly be a bit of a challenge, but they could act quite differently. You also have other things like Harrowing Strike, and this feels a bit like the Smite Evil ability of the Paladin. And this feels a bit more, as I was saying, more like a curse, and it grows in its lethality as you level up, because it's going to give you first a bonus to your attack rolls, then to your damage rolls, then you will start to deal a nasty bleed damage, and when you get to level 20, if you manage to get to that level, your Harrowing Strike is going to feel like a very powerful curse. Some of its effects cannot be healed by conventional methods. Then you have the Strife Search. Whenever a creature within a Malefactor's Aura of Misfortune rolls a natural 1 on a saving throw or attack roll, the ELS spirits become energized. So this is a great way to take advantage of your enemy's blunders. And many of your abilities roll around this concept of bad luck, of curses all around, with things such as Luck of the Damned, Curse Breaker. Now this is a very cool thing because you can break curses by drawing those curses into you, but there is a risk of you becoming cursed and then, or negatively affected by those factors. And then you have Curse Bound. This is also really cool. In fact, I don't think I've seen another class that takes advantage of this. And you can basically use cursed magic items as if they were not cursed. So this is really useful. Sometimes you will find those the cursed cloak or sword or whatever, and this way you can take advantage of that, and you don't have to be desperate of getting rid of those cursed items. You also have things like Discord. Creatures that team up to attack a malefactor find that they impede each other more than they help. That's a very interesting thing of this character class. Even though it's a support class, you have no spells. All of these are abilities of the class, almost instantaneous and ongoing effects. You also have different specific malefactor feats to enhance all of these features and powers, such as the Baleful Aura, Cursed Weapon, Extra Malediction, etc. And you have many other things like Dread Escalations, Dire Displacement, Curse Sense, and if you manage to reach level 20, you will become an avatar of curses and bad luck. Now let's talk about the maledictions. And remember, all of these maledictions can be empowered using your strife points. So this reminds me a bit of the stamina pool presented in Pathfinder Unchained, which is actually quite cool. So you have maledictions such as Aged Bones. The target of this malediction suddenly feels all the weight of their life and age in one moment. Their limbs become heavy and their energy is sapped. So now you get a penalty to strength, dexterity, and constitution. You also have other things. That's pretty scary. Can you imagine that if you get close to this guy and you start to become really, really old, really, really fast? And then you have Bane. Up to 3 creatures of your choice that you can see within 30 feet must make a will saving throw. Whenever a target that fails this saving throw makes an attack roll or a saving throw before the spell ends, the target suffers a penalty to attack rolls or saving throws. So that's really, really bad. Well, in a sense, maledictions work like spells, but even though they work like that, they still feel more, I would say, organic, to put it in a way. You have other maledictions such as Crossed Paths. A malefactor who passes through a creature's threatened area may target them with this malediction as a swift action. If the target fails a will save, he is considered flanked until the beginning of the malefactor's next turn. Imagine if you have a rogue in your party, or perhaps a ninja, an assassin. Perhaps this is going to be quite useful. You also have other things like Clouded Eyes, Curse of Ineptitude, Deflect Weapon, Deafening Din, Firestarter, Fool's Chant, Graven Step, Hesitation. As you can see, all of that has to do with keeping your enemy off balance. There are actually some maledictions that simply make it impossible for your enemy to get a steady footing. You also have other things like Item Breaker. An object the malefactor targets suffers from an unforeseen internal fracture. Really useful if you have an enemy with a very powerful magical item. You have other things like Leaden Limbs. The target of this malediction must make a fortitude save or be restricted to 1 fewer attack of opportunity per round than normal. And I remember there is a malediction that also gives you a percentage chance so that an enemy cannot attack during a certain combat round. So that's really, really nasty. You also have other things like Unwilling Bodyguard. A creature targeted with this malediction must make a will save or become irresistibly attractive to ranged attacks. Really useful. And then you have some malefactor archetypes. The Curse Eater. A Curse Eater draws forth foul magics and consumes them as others would eat honeyed bread. She fears no curse and gains strength from the destruction of curses and dark magic. This archetype feels a bit like that movie, The Sin Eater. So you have things such as Devour Curse, Transfer Curse, Cursed Resilience, and such. And then you have the Doom Herald. The Doom Herald spells out the doom of others and it becomes truth. They are grand proselytizers who foretell the coming of great events and tragedies. Their words leave the listener more susceptible to ill fate. So this feels like a very tragic doomsday diviner of sorts. So imagine a doomsayer and everything that doomsayer pronounces, it could become a reality. You have abilities such as Doom Speaker, Impending Doom, Divine Will, Taste of Fear, Sow Fear. So it has a bit of a demagogue type of feel to it. And then you have the Kismet, probably the most unusual malefactor archetype. The Kismet are pleasant folk that attempt to twist away the misfortune of others and bend it to provide benefits to those deserving around them. So these are masters of taking their bad luck and the bad luck of others and turning it into some sort of blessing. So you have things such as Karmic Blessing, Kismet's Ward, Fortuitous Action, Hand of Fate. And then you have the Moirai. The Moirai are those malefactors that understand destiny to such a degree that they can weave the unescapable tapestry of fate around them and cut short the threats of others. The ancients knew them as the Fates. So as you can see, this Moirai is very much Greek inspired. It has to do with Greek mythology and with those 3 entities that cut the threads of fate with their scissors. So we have abilities such as Whip, Threads of Fate, Verum Fatis, will or woe, divergent fate, and of course, share the threats of fate. And you have the River archetype. This is probably my favorite archetype of the Malefactor because it feels really melee inclined. It gives you a bit more chance to act as a front-line fighter. Rivers are those Malefactors that specialize in crippling their opponents with their dangerous powers and then quickly eliminating them in their weakened states. They are a scourge to all of mankind, seeking to bring only destruction and ruin. Now the River, I really like the illustration because it feels like a combination of Dark Souls or Demon Souls with H.R. Geiger. Really awesome illustration. And this archetype works a bit like the Magus. You cast curses upon your enemies through your weapons. So you have things such as heavy armor proficiency, cursed blade, calamitous strike, the cruelest cut, etc. Then you have some information on Malefactor lore. If the party of adventurers want to make some knowledge arcana or local checks, they can get some details on the Malefactors. And you have Malefactor feats that focus on enhancing the different maledictions, abilities, and traits and features of the Malefactor class. So you have Baleful Aura. Your aura of misfortune becomes larger. Extra malediction. You know the secrets of another malediction. Focused malediction. You are particularly talented at affecting foes with a particular curse. Then you have favored class options. You have many details concerning some of the more popular races in the Advanced Races Handbook of Pathfinder. So you have details on the favored class options of Aasimar, Catfolk, Changelings, Dampiers. I think that Dampiers are very well suited to act as Malefactors because they already feel a bit like cursed with that half vampire, half human type of thing going on. And then you have details on goblins, half elves, half orcs, humans, kitsune, ratfolk, and tieflings, of course, etc. Again, another race that fits the Malefactor class like a glove. And then you have details on how to introduce Malefactors or use Malefactors in your campaign. Just a very short paragraph, but useful nonetheless. A couple of paragraphs. And then you have a sample Malefactor non-player character to be used as an enemy or an ally, or maybe to play as that particular non-player character. Now let's talk about what I think of the Malefactor class. This undoubtedly is a very fun class to play as, but it's also somewhat tricky and complex. You really have to plan out what's going to happen during maybe things don't play out the way you want them to during a particular combat round, and you will have to reposition yourself. I think that the Malefactor works better in small parties of adventurers. It's not impossible to use them in a party of, let's say, 6 or 8 adventurers, but you really have to keep in mind where you're going to be standing at or fighting at, because maybe you want to fight on the front line and you suddenly, the fighter or the barbarian or the paladin is getting affected by your aura of misfortune and you have to step back. But if you step back too much, maybe you're going to get in the way of the archer or the sorcerer or wizard, and then maybe you want to act on the sidelines, and maybe there's the rogue or the cleric, so you have to really find your spot in a particular battle so that your aura of misfortune, all of your maledictions and bad luck affects only your enemies and not your comrades. So I would consider this class to be more suited for an experienced player, a more strategic and tactical player, because if you do not move correctly on the battlefield, you're going to be an obstacle for the other adventurers. But if you know how to use the Malefactor, the class could even feel overpowered. I especially like the way that you can use cursed magical items, but all of those maledictions, because of your aura, because they affect so many enemies at the same time, and you can tweak them in many different ways because of your choices of maledictions or feats, you become a force to be reckoned with as long as you get used to that pariah role or outcast role or keeping away from the other adventurers. I also feel this class is a bit limited when interacting in situations outside of combat. It's not impossible because, for example, maybe you're climbing up a mountain and there are enemies following you. You could try to use your bad luck to give them that unstable footing. Tell your game master that you're going to be using your aura of misfortune like that. So you could play around with those effects. But certainly it's more of a class that is suited for the battlefield. So I highly recommend that you get the Malefactor class. If you're a game master, it's going to be to serve as a very interesting adversary, bringing bad luck to everyone. And if you're going to use it as a player, you're going to have lots of fun finding your place on the battlefield and affecting everyone around you with your terrible luck. But as I was saying, definitely not the easiest class to play as. Thanks for watching my review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. See you later.